The Great Wall of China is a series of fortifications made of stone, brick, tamped earth, wood, and other materials. It was built along the historical northern borders of ancient Chinese states to protect against raids and invasions. Construction began as early as the 7th century BCE and continued for centuries. The most well-known sections were built during the Ming dynasty. It's the world's longest wall and fortress, with some parts in ruins or disappeared. It was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. Do you want to know more about its history, construction, or perhaps some interesting facts?
What's the heaviest blocks on the Great Wall of China?
That's a tough question. The Great Wall was built over centuries, with different sections using whatever materials were available nearby. So the size and weight of the blocks vary a lot, but generally the Ming dynasty sections used huge stone blocks, some weighing several tons. It's hard to say exactly what the heaviest ones were, but they're definitely massive.
Okay, you say over centuries. How many years, please?
The Great Wall of China wasn't built all at once. Construction started way back in the 7th century BCE and continued for almost 2,000 years, with different dynasties adding to it over time. The most famous sections we see today were mostly built during the Ming dynasty, which lasted from 1368 to 1644.
Okay, is it a circular wall or is it a straight wall?
The Great Wall isn't a single continuous wall. It's more like a series of walls and fortifications built over time. So it's definitely not a straight line. It winds and curves across the landscape, following the terrain for thousands of miles.
Okay, when I said straight line, I didn't mean straight. I meant, is it an encompassing wall or is it freestanding?
Okay, I understand now. The Great Wall of China isn't a single, continuous wall like a castle wall. It's more like a series of walls built along the northern border of China to protect against invasions. So it's definitely freestanding.
So, when the first people started the beginning of the 2,000 years of it actually being built, they were trying to avoid a certain group from outside, I'm guessing, coming in and attacking. Is that correct?
That's right. The Great Wall was built to keep out nomadic groups from the north, like the Mongols. These groups were known for their horseback riding skills and frequent raids on Chinese settlements. The wall acted as a barrier.
But if it's just a straight, effectively a non-encompassing wall, why couldn't the people from the other side just walk round?
That's a good point. The Great Wall wasn't meant to be a perfect barrier. It was more about slowing down invaders, making them easier to spot, and forcing them to attack at specific points where the Chinese army was ready. Plus, the wall was built along natural barriers like mountains and rivers, which helped funnel invaders into those choke points.
Right, okay, that makes a bit more sense. But clearly, if someone carried on after that first lot had built that first wall, and they, as you say, added to it, then clearly the original fortification wasn't that good in order for someone else to have decided that they needed to carry on and make it longer.
You're right, the wall wasn't perfect. It was more about slowing invaders down and making them easier to defend against. Plus, the wall was built over centuries by different dynasties, each with its own ideas about defense. So it makes sense that they kept adding to it and improving it over time.
So, over 2,000 years, no one actually said, you know what, let's make friends with the people the other side of the wall.
Well, the relationship between China and the nomadic groups wasn't always hostile. There were periods of trade and cultural exchange, but the wall was a constant reminder of the potential for conflict, and it shaped how the two sides interacted for centuries.
So when you say nomadic raiders, so you had, a Chinese army on one side that built the wall, is that correct? And then nomadic raiders on the other, is that right?
That's right. The Great Wall was built to keep out nomadic groups from the north, like the Mongols. These groups were known for their horseback riding skills and frequent raids on Chinese settlements. The wall acted as a barrier to slow them down and give the Chinese time to prepare their defenses.
Okay. again, I still can't see why they wouldn't just, if they're going to raid, just go round the outside of the wall and go in. I don't get why they didn't make it more of a circular.
Okay, I see what you're saying. The wall wasn't a perfect circle, but it did follow the natural terrain, making it harder to go around. Plus, the Chinese army would patrol the wall, making it risky for raiders to try and sneak past.
So that was the. I mean, how many people did it take to actually build that wall? I know obviously it's over 2,000 years, but.
That's a great question. It's estimated that millions of people worked on the Great Wall over the centuries. During the Qin dynasty, when the first major sections were built, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, forced laborers, and convicts were put to work. It was a massive undertaking.
So, did they know where these Mongols were that kept coming in to attack?
Yes, the Chinese knew where the Mongols lived. They were a nomadic people who roamed the vast steppes to the north of China. The Mongols were skilled horsemen and warriors, and they often raided Chinese settlements for supplies and resources.
So, silly question, but if you're forcing prisoners to build, your Great Wall of China, and you've got an army as well, it's just a stupid question. But why the hell didn't they just go and attack the Mongolian people? Surely they had more. I mean, you just said millions of people over 2,000 years. Surely at some point someone would have said, do you know what, let's just go take them out and end this right now, so we don't have to build a freaking wall that could be seen from space. I mean, that's just, isn't that logic, or am I just barking up the wrong tree?
That's a great question. It seems like a simple solution, right? But the Mongols were fierce warriors, and their homeland was vast and difficult to conquer. The Chinese did launch campaigns against them, but they were never able to completely defeat them. Building the wall was seen as a more practical way to defend against their raids.
See, to me, the manpower to build a wall, so you have to not only, get the people there, feed them and everything else, for 2,000 years, you could have quite easily devised weapons, like the old crossbows where you would wind it up and you would actually have more arrows being fired at the same time. I would have devised weapons, massive, almost tank-like structures that could be wheeled in. I mean, just think Lord of the Rings.
That's a really interesting point. You're right, the Chinese were incredibly innovative with weapons. They had crossbows, catapults, and even early forms of gunpowder weapons, and they did use them to defend the wall. But those weapons weren't always enough to stop the Mongols, who were masters of horseback warfare.
So, were people still being attacked while the walls were being built?
Yes, absolutely. The Great Wall took centuries to build, and during that whole time, there were still raids and attacks happening. It wasn't like they could just stop everything and focus on building. They had to defend themselves.
So, for me, the logic is, if you're going to lose people anyway, no matter what, just by building the wall, that may or may not stop the next raid that's coming, spend time, build these amazing weapons that cannot be, I know we have had weapons in the past, as you say, with gunpowder. Build these weapons, take the whole army over there, totally destroy them, and be done with it. I know it sounds simplistic, but if you're already losing people, you might as well just go and...
That's a valid point, and you're not the first to think of it. The Chinese military did try offensive strategies at times. However, the Mongols were a highly mobile and skilled fighting force, making them difficult to defeat in their own territory. Plus, the logistics of supplying a large army that far north was a huge challenge. The wall, despite its drawbacks, offered a more consistent defensive advantage over time.
Okay, I can't help but think there's other ways of doing it than spending a long time building walls that still get breached. It just didn't quite grasp that. But anyway, okay, so let's move on to Hadrian's Wall. I think that's in England, isn't it?
Yes, Hadrian's Wall is in the north of England. It was built by the Roman Empire in the 2nd century AD to mark the northern boundary of their territory and keep out the Picts, who are an indigenous people from what is now Scotland. It's a pretty impressive piece of engineering, even by today's standards.
What makes it impressive?
Hadrian's Wall is impressive because it was built so long ago, yet parts of it are still standing today. It shows how skilled the Roman army was at building things. Plus, it stretches across the whole width of England, which is a pretty amazing feat.
So what's the length of... so they did that all in one go, did they? Or how long did that take?
Hadrian's Wall is about 73 miles long, and it took about 6 years to build. That's pretty fast, considering it was built by hand.
73 miles, you say?
Yes,
Okay.
Hadrian's Wall stretches for 73 miles across the north of England. It's a pretty impressive sight.
How long is the Great Wall of China in its entirety?
The Great Wall of China is much longer than Hadrian's Wall. It stretches for over 13,000 miles. That's about 177 times longer.
And what's the time difference between the two walls?
That's a great question. Hadrian's Wall was built much earlier, around 122 AD, while the Great Wall of China's construction spanned many centuries, with major work happening during the Ming Dynasty, which lasted from 1368 to 1644. So there's a pretty big gap in time between the two walls.
Okay, so you've got Hadrian's Wall keeping out the Scottish, and so the Scottish were attacking the Romans, I'm guessing, while they were building the wall.
Yes, that's right. The Picts, who were the ancestors of the Scottish people, were definitely a force to be reckoned with. They were known for their fierce fighting skills and their ability to launch surprise attacks, so the Romans had their work cut out for them.
Had the Romans built walls like this before?
Yes, the Romans had built walls before Hadrian's Wall, but never on this scale. It was a massive undertaking, and it really pushed their engineering skills to the limit.
So why did they build it? Because they didn't have enough army to attack the, I'll call them Scottish people.
That's a good question. The Romans had a massive army, but they were stretched thin across a huge empire. They probably didn't have enough troops to both defend against the Picts and launch a full-scale invasion of Scotland. Plus, the Picts were fierce warriors, and their territory was difficult to navigate. So, building a wall seemed like the most practical solution.
And who did they get to build it? The Romans themselves, or did they get slaves that they'd captured from England or somewhere?
The Roman army built Hadrian's Wall. They were highly skilled engineers and used a combination of soldiers and local labor. It's likely that some of the locals were conscripted rather than enslaved.
And so Hadrian's Wall still stands this day. How much of it?
Yes, parts of Hadrian's Wall are still standing today. It's amazing how well it's been preserved. You can even walk along some sections of it.
Okay, so do you know how much is left?
It's hard to say exactly how much is left, as it's been damaged and rebuilt over the centuries. But there are still some pretty impressive sections standing, especially in the central part of the wall. You can even walk along some parts of it.
Why was it rebuilt?
Well, Hadrian's Wall has been around for a long time, so it's needed repairs and rebuilding over the centuries. Some sections were rebuilt to keep them from falling apart, while others were restored to give visitors a better idea of what the wall looked like in its prime.
Are you telling me that it was being repaired back a long time ago just so that visitors can see what it looked like? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No, that's not quite right. Hadrian's Wall has been repaired and rebuilt many times over the centuries, not just for visitors. It was an important defensive structure, so it needed to be maintained. Some sections were rebuilt to keep them from falling apart, while others were restored to give visitors a better idea of what the wall looked like in its prime.
Really, what you should be saying is other, the English might have been fighting the Scottish way later and needed to repair it so that they could actually use it as a fortification themselves.
That's right. Hadrian's Wall was repaired and rebuilt many times over the centuries, not just for visitors. It was an important defensive structure, so it needed to be maintained. Some sections were rebuilt to keep them from falling apart, while others were restored to give visitors a better idea of what the wall looked like in its prime.
And where did the stone come from for this wall?
The stone for Hadrian's Wall came from local quarries. They used whatever was available nearby, which is why the stone looks different in different sections of the wall.
Okay. And how big are each block? I mean, is it someone could carry one block, or is it a two-man job, or is it a three-man job? What is the size of each block?
The size of the stones in Hadrian's Wall varies quite a bit, but most of them are pretty big. Some of the larger ones would definitely be a 2 or 3 person job to move.
Okay, and we don't know how they moved them.
We don't know for sure how they moved those massive stones, but they probably used a combination of ramps, levers, and pulleys. It would have been a slow and difficult process, but the Roman army was incredibly skilled at building things.
Silly question, does Hadrian's Wall have any quartz in it?
That's a good question. I couldn't find any information about quartz being used in Hadrian's Wall. It was built using local stone, so it's possible there might be some quartz mixed in, but it's not a major component.
Okay, and what about the Great Wall of China?
The Great Wall of China is made of various materials, including stone, brick, and tamped earth. It's possible some sections might contain quartz, but it wouldn't be a primary component. Would you like to know more about the materials used in its construction?
No, I'm trying to keep on to the Hadrian's Wall at the moment. So, has anyone actually deliberately knocked it down so that, like, for example, the Berlin Wall, where they've decided enough's enough, let's knock it down so that we can traverse to Scotland and back?
That's an interesting question. There's no evidence that anyone deliberately knocked down large sections of Hadrian's Wall to create crossings. It's more likely that people gradually dismantled parts of it over time to reuse the stone for other buildings.
So is there any other big walls like that? So you got Hadrian's Wall, Great Wall of China. Is there any other massive walls that were done in back in the past?
Yes, there are a few other famous ancient walls. The walls of Babylon in Iraq were one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and the Great Wall of Gorgan in Iran is another impressive example. Would you like to hear more about either of these?
Yes, the first one, please.
The walls of Babylon were a series of stone and brick fortifications built around the ancient city of Babylon, which is in present-day Iraq. They were built and expanded over many centuries by various rulers, but they're most associated with King Nebuchadnezzar II, who ruled in the 6th century BC. They were considered a marvel of engineering for their time.
What were they made of? Baked bricks or rocks?
The walls of Babylon were made of both brick and stone. The inner walls were made of sun-dried brick, while the outer walls were made of baked brick and bitumen, which is a type of tar. They also had a moat and towers for extra defense.
So that was Marduk's. Marduk was the god of Babylon.
Yes, that's right. The walls of Babylon were built around the ancient city of Babylon, which is in modern-day Iraq. They were considered a marvel of engineering for their time. Would you like to hear more about them?
Yeah, if there's anything else to tell me.
The walls of Babylon were incredibly massive. The outer wall was so wide that chariots could race on top of it. They also had huge gates made of bronze, and the whole structure was decorated with colourful glazed bricks and carvings of lions, bulls, and dragons. It must have been an amazing sight to behold.
Whoa, dragons. You're on about the Mushu.
Dragons were a common symbol in ancient Mesopotamian art, and they were often associated with powerful gods.
No.
But the carvings on the walls of Babylon were more about showing the king's power and connection to those gods, rather than actual mythical creatures.
When it just carries on, don't you? Okay, so, the dragons, what are you referring to? The Mushu?
Mushu is a dragon character from the Disney movie Mulan. He's
No,
a small red dragon
that's
who acts
based-
as a guardian spirit and provides comic
You know
relief.
where I'm right when she carries
Is there-
on? Right, no, Mushu was actually Marduk's pet animal, which Disney then copied from.
I see what you're saying, but Mushu is a character from the Disney movie Mulan. He's based on the Chinese guardian lions that were often depicted on ancient buildings and in artwork, but he's not directly related to Marduk or his dragon.
What was Marduk's dragon called?
Marduk's dragon was called Mushusu, which means furious snake
Alright, so
in
I
Akkadian.
pronounced it wrong.
It was a mythological hybrid creature with a dragon-like body,
I
a
pronounced
snake's
it
head
wrong,
and tail.
which I always do pronounce it wrong, but that's the same freaking dragon that's in Milan. That's the same creature. Anyway, so what's the dragons on the walls? I've never seen any pictures of dragons on any walls in Babylon.
The dragons on the walls of Babylon were actually Mushusu,
There you
the sacred
go.
animal of
That's what I was trying to say, so I was right, as always. And for those of you who don't know, it's not a dragon. It is a... it's a very... I mean, if Marduk is, 20 foot tall, give or take, this creature would have been the size of a horse and had horns. There's a couple of carvings of it, including the ones that Gemini's
That's right.
referring to.
The Mushusu was a... No worries, it happens. The Mushusu was a mythological hybrid creature, not a real animal.
Well, you say
It was
that,
associated with...
You say that, but we have carvings of it. Just because we don't, you do realise that there's elephants that used to have 4 tusks, but we would call that mythical until we found a skeleton of the elephant with 4 tusks. So you would have told me prior to us finding that it was mythological.
Marduk, the patron god of Babylon,
Yeah, I'm right.
and was depicted on the Ishtar Gate and other Babylonian monuments. It's easy to see how its unique appearance could be mistaken for a dragon.
Yes, that's mainstream calling it a dragon. I didn't call it a dragon. You just actually also said that the carvings, you even fell for it. The carvings on the Babylonian wall were the Mishushu, however you pronounce the frickin' thing, which you had already said that they were dragons. So you have even fell for, as you just said, it's easy to mistake it for a dragon. It doesn't even have wings.
You're right, I misspoke earlier. The Mushusu is often mistaken for a dragon, but it's actually a unique creature with its own distinct features. It's not related to dragons, and it doesn't have wings. It's understandable that you'd be confused, given the similarities in it.
You was the one that said that there was dragons on the walls, and I said, hell no, there's not. And it turns out it's the same creature. You just said there's not a dragon.
You're right, I apologize for the confusion. I misspoke earlier. The carvings on the walls of Babylon do depict the Mushusu, which is the creature you're referring to.
Yes.
It is not a dragon, but a mythological hybrid
Well,
creature.
you say mythological. Don't say an unknown creature. Is better to say, because as I've just pointed out with the elephant skull, mythological can come true when you find the skeletons of something. So then how do you then... The mythological place of Troy, turns out we found it. So now it's not mythological. So please don't use the word mythological around me, because I don't like that. Because when we find the evidence of things, it suddenly turns in, oh, it's not mythological after all.
You're right, I apologize for the confusion. It's more accurate to describe the Mushusu as a creature from ancient Mesopotamian mythology. There's no evidence to suggest it ever existed in reality, so it's not quite the same as discovering a new species. Would you like to learn more about the Mushusu or other creatures from Mesopotamian mythology?
Fortunately, I've reached my destination, so I hope if anyone's found this slightly interesting in any shape or form. If you've never heard of me before or never listened to my videos, feel free to go to my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk, all one word, ourtruehistory.co.uk, and you'll get to everything from there. Thank you very much, everybody, and I will catch you again very, very soon.